Poilievre, who delivered a joke on board of a WestJet flight. And of course, now we have left-wing social media commentators spiraling into an angry tirade because of that. And then finally, just today, breaking news, Health Canada has rubber-stamped a novel mRNA booster shot. And that is specific to supposedly the currently circulating Omicron subvariants, depending on what you follow. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. I think that probably won't be YouTube safe. So for anybody who's currently joining us, you can find us streaming live on YouTube, Rumble, Getter, and Odyssey. And because of YouTube's censorious thuggery, we cannot speak freely about the safe and effective narrative there. And so we will switch at some point toward the end of the show to those other platforms specifically so that we can exercise our freedom of expression and our free speech when we discuss the novel booster authorizations that just took place, as I mentioned, just less than an hour ago, or a little bit over an hour ago, by Health Canada in a press conference. So without further ado, actually, before we continue on, if you're joining us on Rumble, you can support our work by giving us what's called a Rumble rant. And so by offering a small monetary donation, it's a great way for our audience to get their comments stated on air, get some commentary, some back and forth from Drea, myself, either or. And if Drea is still having some technical difficulties, I would really appreciate having some comments from our viewers so that we can keep the banter going. So if you're able to, please contribute there and we can keep bantering on the show. I'm not sure. Drea, are you there? Do you have audio yet? Can we hear you?
No, can you guys hear me good? Sorry, everybody, for the delay. I was having some major audio issues. Do I sound all right?
Yes, loud and clear. Perfect.
Oh,
to me anyway.
good.
Hopefully everybody else can hear you as well. Thank you for sorting that out. And then I guess just before we get into the news of the day, because we're running a little bit behind schedule, so we're trying to kind of keep things very succinct and concise. I have to give a shout out to the former Alberta pro-life group called the, why can't I find what they're actually called? They're hosting Ben Shapiro on November the 12th in Calgary. And it's a very long-winded URL that they're using, unfortunately, Wilberforce. So at wilberforce.com, that's formerly known as Alberta Pro-Life. You can find tickets there. They're hosting Ben Shapiro, as I mentioned, on November the 12th in Calgary. Obviously, he is one of the most well-known conservative commentators in the world, and he's host of the Ben Shapiro Show. He is one of America's most watched pro-life advocates, columnist, lawyer, and a best-selling author. He's really well known for, I suppose, his relentless ability to tackle the culture wars and the hottest cultural topics of our time. And for our Rebel supporters and viewers, you can get exclusive access to the event, early access, by heading over to that website. I think it's wilberforce.com, and there's a couple forward slashes. But anyway, if you just go to wilberforce.com, you can find their Shapiro event. And if you type in the code REBEL at checkout, then you can pre-order and obtain your tickets before anybody else. So we wanted to give them a little bit of a shout out. And you have 2 months to go, but they suspect and expect that it will be a sold out show. So you can head on over there and get your tickets.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Without further ado, we can touch on unhinged, mask obsessed Nili Kaplan-Myrth. She's the recently and controversial trustee at the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board. And they held a special meeting last night, September 11th, to discuss a code of conduct violation that was issued against her. The complaint was filed by Trustee Donna Dixon, who alleged that Myrth breached sections 3.17 and 3.18 of the Code of Conduct in a series of text messages exchanged by the two, where it was alleged that Myrth's comments became increasingly racist and abusive. I think there's the third tweet that's embedded in the article there. You can see a sample of the tweets. Unfortunately, Nili Kaplan-Myrth has me blocked from Twitter, so I don't see each and everything that she posts. But her tweets, and it's been alleged repeatedly by others that her presence on Twitter is really bullying and harassing. She is just relentless with allegations against anyone who disagrees with her, really. Will resort to things like calling them racists, bigots, homophobes, transphobes. I mean, the list, anything that she can slander and slam you on with in terms of ad hominem attacks, she will. So she was urging people at this time, her fellow trustees, to abstain or vote for her motion at the time. I believe this was in November of 2023. She, as we mentioned, is a mask-obsessed trustee, and she put forward a motion to mandate masking once again in schools in the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board region. And she meddled in her own motion and tried to convince and compel other trustees to vote with her and or abstain. And in this particular instance, with Donna Dixon, who is a Black woman, she told her that she shouldn't vote with white supremacists. And Donna Dixon, as you can see, maybe, are we showing it on screen there? Donna Dixon responded, "Leave me alone." And she said, "Don't talk to me about equity then." And the board meeting itself, we have a clip here when Nili became really unhinged and argumentative. And the radical Lyra Evans, the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board is really comprised of very radical trustees and board members. So it's really funny to see kind of like the war of the progressives and how they're internally fighting. It reminded me really of a kindergarten class. It was like, please stop being argumentative.
It's a lot like our board.
Yeah. And so I don't know if we can go back to that clip there, but Lyra Evans had to call a recess because of Nili's just unhinged inability to contain and control herself.
March 29th is more than 6 months after the interaction that she's complaining about. That is out of order, according to the Education Act.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Her complaint about November 24th was lodged on May 29th. That is more than 6 months after the event. This is out of order.
So the complaint was lodged at the beginning of February, less than 3 months after the incident. The policy at the time had a 3-month window. I'm going to look to Executive Officer Giroux to explain this further.
Sorry, I just opened the relevant section.
March 29th is more than...
Yeah, so there's some other clips that follow.
Yeah, there's a different clip. You just kind of loses it and interrupts, and I don't know if we have that handy, but I just want to say, you know, when people talk about Klaus Schwab and the way he looks, like he fits the role. He looks literally like the villain. And I feel like the thing with her is she really fits the Karen of all Karen's looks. Like, I don't want to be petty and look at the looks, but I just mean they're fitting such into that character look. And can we go back to a time when school boards were not so spicy and exciting? Like, I have seen so many videos that go viral of school boards. Like, what is going on here? This is supposed to be good for children. And the stuff that's happening with these people on the boards is just a reminder. Start paying attention to your municipal elections because, of course, way less people vote in those things. But look how important it is when you have people like Nili up there, who we've been reporting on for quite some time. It looks like there's an article here from True North. It says Ottawa School Trustee Nili Kaplan barely survived code of conduct vote. So that's sort of what this is all about. And a total of 8 votes were required to rule that she breached the code, but only 7 voted in favor and 4 abstained. And so in brackets, it says likely those who have supported her and her childish antics since she won as trustee a year ago. But do we have any of those clips that are a little bit more spicy to show? Because I think that would be really good if we have those handy. You know, there's even
I embedded a couple in the, oh, here it is. Yes, this one here. Let's roll this one.
She was attacked in a meeting. A Black woman by a white woman. There are other times when members
I'm going to object. I'm a Jewish woman.
So it's really funny because I don't think we can just cut this, but
everyone.
Well, it goes on longer, but yeah. But that's when Lyra has to shut it down.
And that was enough. Inappropriate.
You
have been out to get me from day one. You have spoken ill.
Everyone.
Order.
This meeting is going on recess.
So embarrassing. The thing is that Nili's really getting a taste of her own medicine here. Nili went viral last year after she, what was called at the time, democratically oppressed a parental delegation from Nick Morabito, who was delegating on the basis of questioning the safety of his daughters to use bathrooms where biological males could willy-nilly decide that they're female that day and have free access to school change rooms and school washrooms, female-specific school change rooms and washrooms due to a board policy. And we did an interview with him back in the spring of 2022, and he was silenced and cut off by Nili Kaplan-Myrth. So it's funny they've come full circle. You're really seeing Nili is now being silenced and cut off because she just can't contain herself. She becomes so unhinged. And you can see there's a couple embedded tweets in the article that I wrote up. One from Chanel Fall, who we've also interviewed previously, where Nili becomes unhinged after the meeting and even potentially assaults an independent journalist. I think this is Donald, actually, upon closer look.
Donald Smith. He's now called Independent Media Ottawa.
I think so.
Sure.
So I'm not, for my own safety,
No,
it will be where
not inside the board. No.
No.
You can go inside that room there.
Sure, come on in here. But Rebel News is not allowed.
I'm not Rebel News. I'm not Rebel News. I'm independent. You can't kick me out. She can't kick me out. I'm not part of Rebel News.
Get out. We are speaking on our own. No, we are speaking on our own. You can come in and speak afterwards. Right? Can you please tell her I'm going to speak right now where I don't have others around? Out.
No, it's a public meeting. I'm not Rebel News.
Get out.
Don't do that.
This is who I speak to. Get out.
I have you on video, Dr. Nell. You assault me.
Yeah, there's another angle of that,
where
she,
Chantal, did you see that?
where she closes the door.
Right on him. And so
another angle.
Donald Smith, he used to be Independent Media BC, but he is an autistic journalist. And here she is slamming the door on him. She doesn't even know what she's talking about. He's never been a Rebel News reporter. And according to him, he's assaulting. I never saw the other angle, Tamara. What did you think from seeing the other angle?
The other angle is pretty, you can clearly see that she's slamming the door onto him. I did embed that one in the article too. It's the one right under Chanel's piece, Chanel's tweet or post. That's going to be so hard to get used to, this Twitter renaming. I think it's only 10 seconds if we could just throw to that one quickly. It's just embedded in the article right after that Chanel one we just watched. Let me just grab the link here. Oh, sorry, it's 34 seconds. Whoops.
Yeah, she's really, like you said, it's all coming down. Oh, there we go.
No,
Get out. Get out. I can choose who I speak to. Get out.
I have you on video, Dr. Nell. You assault me.
Please.
Yeah, there it is.
People are getting abused just for being, when people think they're Rebel News. We have to do a stand with Donald Smith now, and he's not even a Rebel News employee. But yeah, this is, I mean, it's not surprising to me because she's always kind of been praised, but desperate.
Yeah, and if you go back to one of my previous tweets, I just posted a short clip of Nili months and months ago when she was wearing a mask in a Zoom call. And she says basically that anyone who wants to get back to normal, she calls them far-right, anti-mask, anti-vax ableists. Like if people just wanted to get back to normal, they were being called far-right, anti-vax ableists. according to family doctor, nonetheless, Nili Kaplan-Myrth. And we posted a really short clip about that here. Yeah, I mean, it's 2.5 minutes. Maybe we won't play it all, but here's a little teaser.
It is inappropriate to say that masks are some form of hardship. They are not. They are not cruelty, Matt. They are not in any way restricting people's ability to make friends, to play, to work, to do any of the things. In fact, there are places in the world where even, for example, in Italy, opera singers are on stage wearing masks. There is nothing that you are saying that is based in science or medicine. What you are saying is based in right-wing, anti-mask, anti-vax ideology, which has been your calling card throughout the pandemic.
All right, let's let him respond.
Sorry, I missed. You said something and then anti-mask, anti-vaccine?
Right wing, maybe?
Right wing. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
What I'm saying very clearly is you have stood with people. You were part of the push to politicize and to use the terms restrict and freedom and all of this terminology that is really, I mean, vaccine mandates are quite normal. We've always had them. School boards require that students are immunized against measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, meningitis. It's a normal thing.
The thing that I love so much about that clip is that I posted the screenshots and embedded them in what she's saying that directly contradicts what she's saying. And this was on the Steve Paikin show. It's actually from September of 2022, so a year ago. And the host, Steve Paikin, asked Nili, you're in your office alone. Why? Just to try to get your side of the story here. Why are you wearing a mask? And she just went off. And by the end of it, her eyes, it's all in the eyes for me. You can see her eyes become so enraged and aggressive, and her face is all red and flushed because, I mean, arguably she can't breathe. She's not getting enough oxygen, and she's exerting so much energy trying to fight everybody all the time. The fact that she evaded this code of conduct allegation based on one lacking vote is just absolutely absurd at this point. No one voted against it. 7 voted for, and 4 people abstained. And so they needed 8, as that article in mine did mention as well, as that stipulated. And they just didn't have that one additional person who had the fortitude to come forward and vote against her increasingly aggressive and nonsensical behavior. Like, this is, to be a trustee and to act with such professional disregard is really sad, and I think part of why Ontario's Education Minister, Stephen Lecce, instituted that new legislation, the Better Schools and Student Outcomes Act, to increase school board accountability and rein in hysterical trustees just like Nili Kaplan-Myrth. And for anybody, too, who's curious, we launched a petition and campaign against Nili because she was repeatedly having the GoFundMe, not GoFundMe. What's that petition page that was shutting people down?
Go get something?
Yeah, so, no, I can't. Anyway, there was 2 petitions launched by. No, it was another one. There was 2 petitions launched by concerned Ottawa parents who wanted to see Nili removed from her position as trustee after these comments and the way that she was conducting herself and her excessive and extreme bullying and harassment online. And the platform repeatedly took down their petitions. And so, change.org, that's it.
Change.org.
So Rebel News.
Course. No, you should have just said Bill Gates's petition company.
So we started our own petition at firenili.com. There is hundreds of thousands of signatures there. And so, as she comes back into the news once again, if you would like to see this radical extremist removed from her position as trustee, then head over to firenili.com, sign our petition. Sheila did drop it off a few months back. And Nili once again became completely unhinged, screamed at Sheila, slammed the door in her face. So I think it's an appropriate time to kind of revamp that petition and keep the pressure on the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board, who has at least a few members who are too scared to vote against Nili. Yeah, look, here she becomes just so unhinged. And like, she's carrying her mask in her purse. And this claims to be someone who follows the science and is all about cleanliness and hygiene. Yeah, she comes back and she's shouting at Sheila here, "You will back off." And she looks even more ridiculous because Sheila's so calm.
I know, Sheila did really good there. But mask became almost like a superhero cape for some people who I think have never had an ounce of bravery in their life before. It was like you put this on and automatically it made them a good person when they're not. It made them a lifesaver when they're not saving any lives. And people just don't want to let that die. And I think it probably causes so much anxiety and frustration when you see people walking around happy and smiling, and you can't get rid of that. You can't get rid of that thing, and you want everybody to just fall in line so bad. It must be terrifying, and it's sad, and I can't imagine my family doctor doing that.
Yeah, her patients. I would be extremely concerned. Hey, if you're a patient of Nili Kaplan-Myrth and you'd like to come forward with some information, feel free to reach out to us. tips@rebelnews.com. We would love to hear from you. So let's go to a quick ad break then, I guess, Straya, and we'll come back to some more conservative versus liberal news pieces.
We're facing an imminent threat. A planned blackout of all news content in Canada is coming to Facebook and Instagram, threatening to silence Rebel News and those who depend on us for the other side of the story. The cause? Well, Justin Trudeau's new censorship law, Bill C-18, which demands social media companies pay news outlets for the news stories their users share on the platform. It's a shakedown and a desperate attempt to keep the mainstream media afloat. It seems the billions in taxpayer subsidies just aren't enough to keep the country's propagandists in business. But Meta, Facebook's parent company, has chosen to block Canadian news content rather than comply, Rebel News included. Many have already lost their ability to access our Facebook and Instagram pages. The blackout will soon affect every user in Canada. But fear not, we have had a plan to protect your access to our news content. We've partnered with Private Internet Access, PIA, a VPN provider dedicated to safeguarding digital privacy. For just $2 a month, you can maintain your access to our content across all your devices. And unlike other VPN providers, PIA does not store any user data as it's automatically deleted from their servers to avoid leaks and government subpoenas for information. Their servers are located in all 50 states, not the ones in communist China. You can visit piavpn.com/rebelnews and enjoy an exclusive 83% discount and 4 months free. Use it to bypass regional restrictions and stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world. And stick it to Trudeau's new censorship law. Safeguard freedom of speech and join us to combat Trudeau's censorship today at piavpn.com/rebelnews.
What a time to be alive, where you need to have a VPN just to be able to access news on social media platforms in the once free and democratic nation of Canada. We have a quick super chat to get to from World's Worst Gamer. Says, thanks, Rebel News. Well, thanks, World's Worst Gamer, for your support. Happy to be here to provide contrarian views and point out the hypocrisy of the bureaucracy, especially when they become and act like unhinged lunatics. In recent news, the Justin Trudeau Liberal caucus is spooked by the polls. This CBC article says that Liberal MPs hope Trudeau hears their concerns as the caucus gathers. Caucus members want to settle on strategy to counter Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's attacks. And it goes on to say that some Liberal members of Parliament are heading into a national caucus retreat this week, say they're facing blowback from voters at the doorsteps. Surprise, surprise. And the Liberals actually go out and conduct door knocking and talk to people on the ground. They see just how angry and frustrated Canadians have become. And they hope the Prime Minister and his inner circle, right, the ones who are completely out of touch, sitting up in their ivory towers, listen to their concerns before it's too late. And of course, the meetings will start Tuesday in London, Ontario, a battleground region of southwestern Ontario, as the party faces its worst polling numbers since forming government in 2005. Finally, it's coming to their doorstep too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they should be scared. The people are tired of being quiet on certain issues. If you read the article, it says that what they're complaining about is things like climate change and cost of living. I'm sure, obviously, cost of living is a big one. I didn't see any mentions of freedom and what's happened to our democracy, but that's a concern. It would be hilarious if a Liberal came knocking on our door, like even myself or my husband, to answer that. It would be quite funny. And now it says ahead of the gathering that they were having, that CBC spoke to about a dozen MPs, and that they told CBC they don't feel the Prime Minister listens to their views or solicits their advice. So they're turning on their own. Maybe some will cross the floor. I know that's, I know that rarely happens, but you never know. They spoke to about a dozen MPs and granted some confidentiality so that they could speak freely. They said they plan to use the next few days to urge the Prime Minister, his office and cabinet to offer a fresh plan to Canadians on the top issues of the day, because many don't believe the government's current communication strategy is working. So there is a lot of trouble going on. And it reminds me of, I can't remember, and I should remember that MP's name. He was a French MP who finally spoke out about how divisive the Prime Minister was being during the Freedom Congress and stuff, and that must have taken a lot of courage to do. But these ones are behind the scenes. Who knows, maybe he's one of them, we don't know, that are saying this is getting ridiculous. And they're saying they don't have anything to do with how he's behaving, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it shows that the party's really being undermined by the actions of Trudeau, and the party's losing credibility. That's the only way to put it. And this comes as the Conservatives, I think they surged 14% ahead in the polls just yesterday. We talked about it a little bit on the live stream. But recently at the Conservative convention over the weekend, grassroots Conservatives voted against surgical and hormone replacement therapies for transgendered kids. And of course, the same media is the mainstream media. This particular article is from CTV News, but they're all up in arms about it, saying that this will essentially kill children and cost them their lives. Meanwhile, we know that as people who've gone through transition and come out on the other side, it doesn't change any of their mental health concerns, and that kind of suicidal ideation that seems to be a big component of gender dysphoria, and the need to seek gender affirming care is what it's quote unquote being called. But it was 69%. Now, it was a non-binding vote, mind you, but 69% of grassroots Conservatives voted in favor of disavowing this idea of gender affirming care. And that's not to say, that anything about trans lives or trans kids, which, well, Billboard Chris goes around and just simply asks people, what is a trans kid? No one seems to be able to answer that pointedly. But this is just simply about holding back on hormone therapies, irreversible pharmaceutical interventions and surgical interventions on minors, on children under the age of 18 who don't have a rational, fully developed brain to make these life-altering conclusions. And they're really not being given true informed consent from what I've seen and from what I've heard on the ground reporting. Dre, I know you followed this file also very closely. And it seems to be the same across the board, that these kids aren't being given true informed consent, and they come out on the other side of it and they regret it.
Of course, the parents aren't being told too most of the time. But what's interesting, I mean, if you want to use the word interesting, but what I do find interesting about this is that just like the Prime Minister seems to be out of touch with his party MPs, the CBC and the CTV, because a lot of them are talking about this, are out of touch with, I think, what the people think on this issue, because they're not saying, no, there can be no gender care. They're against child mutilation and sterilization. I think it was delegates who, and pro, like you said, waiting till a child's frontal cortex is developed. That's the area of the brain that doesn't get developed till around age 25. And it's responsible for things like reasoning, judgment, problem solving. So if you're going through a hard time and you're 12 years old, maybe you're getting rejected by the opposite sex, so you think you want to be the opposite sex. I've heard that story before. So, they don't have these skills. And so what we're seeing here is most conservatives are saying, no, let's wait till the brain's developed, they're older, help them in other ways. And so the news doesn't understand that. That's like, they're like, oh, they're killing kids. But really, I think a lot of people are looking at that and going, oh, this is a reason to vote for the Conservatives. And I think they're not realizing they're actually promoting the Conservatives. There is a Tory candidate, I think we have it here, that's running for the CBC. Well, in some ways, no. Running for the Conservative Party. And this candidate is transgender and is also saying, hey, this could lead to deaths with kids. So could. What I want to know is, first of all, it's like you said, we know that when they are already transitioned, their suicide rate is lower. We know when we speak with detransitioners, almost all of them, at least all the ones I've interviewed, say the same thing. Something else traumatic happened to them or was going on in their lives, and they wish they received counseling for that. And of course, that's happening a lot with the suicide ideation. But where were these people who are so concerned about kids killing themselves in this very small group of kids that are gender dysphoric or being educated on how to become gender dysphoric? Where were they during lockdowns, where kids were actually killing themselves at such drastic high rates? Where were they? Where was the concern about child suicide then? I didn't hear it from anybody really in a position of power, except for those who were being labeled far-right extremists for doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I had a write-up. Here it is. I'm just going to show because, a lot of parents didn't need the stats, but now that we have the statistics and they're in, it clearly shows that the pandemic negatively affected Canadian youth and will haunt them for the rest of their lives, arguably. And they were all knee-jerk, fear-driven school closures that were a result of hysteria, not evidence. And it vindicates those parental concerns early on who knew that these measures were harmful and also unjustified. And so this report came out from the Fraser Institute, and it showed that in excessive amounts of mental health concerns in children who suffered the ill effects of lockdowns, of social isolation, of masking, right? We cannot forget that masking has a serious psychological effect on children who are in peak and prime stages of their cognitive and emotional and social development. So I hyperlinked the full study and report in that particular written piece. But, remember at the onset of the pandemic, you were called a selfish grandma killer, and arguably these individuals who claim to care so much about kids and the rights of the child and trans rights. Well, as you mentioned, where were they when this stuff was happening and inflicting harm on children? Because nobody was advocating for, in Ontario, look at 135 days of school closures, the most out of any other province in Canada, arguably anywhere in North America and developed nations across the world. And you didn't have anybody coming out and denouncing any of that.
Yeah, no, disgusting. Child abuse went up too. Babies were coming in with their heads fractured at higher rates than before. Oh. And there's all this fallout that we haven't even touched on the fallout from them. Like things like Tourette's in kids went up. What's that about? And, you have family doctors like Nili saying there's no harms with masks. Are you kidding me? On kids? Anybody who's taken child psychology, which I assume she's taken before, knows how important something called modeling is for the younger kids. They literally don't know how to express themselves with their face unless they see other people doing it. So to not see their peers, not see their teacher. And I just remember being in Costco without wearing the mask very much. And I remember smiling at a child, like a baby who had the mask on. And everybody, well, that's what we do when we're in the grocery store and we lock eyes with a baby. We smile. Everybody does it. Make eye contact and smile. And that gives them this assurance that when they're in this big, unfamiliar space, it's okay. but they weren't getting that. I don't even know what kind of effect that had on kids. I didn't even teach my little guy to the grocery store during that whole time because I didn't want him seeing, a sea of fear. It's such a terrifying looking thing to me. So.
Yeah, and contrary to that also, I think you saw the seniors who were so negatively affected similarly by social isolation, by lockdowns, by these measures. And something that I remember as a parent in the pre-COVID and the before times is how much little old ladies at the grocery store would just love to see small children and babies, and they would stop and they'd coo at them and they'd interact a little bit. And, if your baby or your toddler interacted back, they would just be totally smitten. And the masking and the forced social distancing rules and the isolation completely killed all of those opportunities to engage with your fellow humans, fellow humanity in those small little interactions that we didn't think twice about before. Now you didn't have them at all. And that devastated not only an entire generation of youth who probably benefited on some level from those seemingly minute interactions that actually form your ability to socially interact and communicate, right? Because we have no idea what the effects of that quelling will be on future generations because we've always just had it. And so this is really unprecedented. I have a toddler who was born in 2021, who I think it was the 4th or 5th lockdown at the time. Even postpartum, I couldn't even go out and buy him new baby clothes or myself clothes that fit because everything was shuttered once again. And so I could see firsthand, having a few children prior to him, the effects that it was having on infants, being out, masked, isolated. We tried to keep things as normal as possible, but it still wasn't because everything was closed and shuttered and the mask mandates were in full effect. So that's anecdotal, but I definitely saw it and I recognized the curbing effect that it had on his development during those peak times in his cognition and his social needs. But anyway, let's continue on because we have a clip here from Pierre Poilievre. Many of you may have already seen it, but it's circulating online, where he makes jokes on boarding a WestJet flight and really is offering some comedic relief, right? Canadians are struggling. They're fed up. They're frustrated. They're angry. And he swoops in and offers some jokes on a WestJet plane. So we'll play the clip and then we'll come back to show you the backlash he's received.
Hello everyone, this is Pierre Poilievre, happy to join you for a wonderful WestJet flight back to my hometown of Calgary. Who's ready for a home you can afford? Who's ready for some common sense? Who's ready to give a big thank you to the WestJet pilots and crew? This is your captain warning, a little bit of turbulence, but it will only last about 2 years, in which time we'll have a totally new crew and pilot in charge of the plane. We'll pierce through the storm, safely land in our home, the country we know and love. Your home, my home, our home. Let's bring it home.
Okay, so here's the thing. The left is losing it over that clip. I know Poilievre posted it on his Twitter himself. They're boycotting, WestJet now. We have Jan here. What's her last name again? Jan Arden.
Yeah, Jan Arden.
Right, she's from CTV. And so she's posted making a big deal saying, hey, WestJet, you and I will not be doing business ever again. This is so ridiculously disappointing. I've seen doctors saying things on Twitter, but here's the thing. The plane was for delegates, conservative delegates. Like, it wasn't even just like a random WestJet flight here. So, it probably would have been handled differently. And if I'm not mistaken, I think WestJet actually put out a statement about that too. But even when they find that out, even when people in their comments are like, hey, like it wasn't a normal flight, it was all of their conservative delegates, then they don't back down. They still have this illogical, like, we must destroy WestJet mentality. And don't get me wrong, if I saw Trudeau up on WestJet or something, I'd probably say something like as a joke, like, oh, like, that's not a good look or something. But no, man, I'm still going to get the cheapest flight to get me where I need to go. For the cancellation over something like that. And it's just so amazing, like the things that trigger the left to such a degree, they get so angry. And I think part of that is maybe they don't understand how he's getting the traction he is getting, especially when he wants, state preferred media defunded.
Yeah, exactly. And, one of his campaign platforms, slogans just seems to be bring common sense home. And I think that's really resonating with Canadians. But I thought it was really funny. Jan Arden is a musician. And so she's really well known for her song Insensitive. And someone wrote in the comments of her tweet, you might have some advice to give on how to be insensitive. If anyone knows that song, oh, that was so funny. And, we really need that comedic relief, right? That's why I love David Menzies, because it's like, these are serious topics that you can dissect and discuss and report on. But at the end of the day, it can be really negative and it can really drag you down. And so having someone who's just ready to make light of a situation is so refreshing and great to see. And then,
Poilievre, it's not like a cheerleader, Poilievre. I know there's someone always in the comments who's like, you guys are talking about him too much, but it's like, if he's going to do something bad, we're going to talk about it too. But right now he really is on a roll when it comes to going up against the Liberals. You saw that earlier in the conversation when you talked about their MPs, they're sweating bullets. And that was funny. That was a good joke. And people are seeing it. People are getting mad about it. But again, I think it's going to have the opposite effect where people are like, it's really weird. I don't really like the Canada I'm seeing under, three terms of Trudeau.
Yeah, exactly. It's hitting Canadians where it hurts, which is in their pocketbooks. So without further ado, let's get into this Health Canada authorization of the novel mRNA booster. Now, Drea, I suspect that you and I will want to go off a little bit and not be censored by YouTube's community standards. So I propose to show this first clip where they make this announcement and tell Canadians to watch out for misinfo, because that'll be great to keep on YouTube. But then after we play this clip, we're going to switch over to some of those other platforms, Rumble, Odyssey, and Getter. And we're going to continue the conversation over there. What do you think?
I think that's the wisest choice.
All right, let's play that first clip and then we'll come back and chat.
Health Canada continues to use rigorous and independent scientific processes to ensure all health products meet our stringent requirements for safety, efficacy, and quality before allowing them on the market. And as with all of Health Canada's vaccine and drug authorizations, we want to stress that we only examine the most robust scientific evidence from trusted and reliable sources. We recognize that there's an abundance of information available that's sometimes false and exaggerated. We encourage people to consider their sources of information very carefully. As we did with all our COVID-19 vaccines, we're publishing a number of documents about this decision, including the Canadian Product Monograph and the Regulatory Decision Summary, which provides a high-level summary of the evidence that we reviewed. All of this information is available on the Government of Canada's main COVID-19 website. Health Canada and the Public Health Agency of Canada will monitor for any adverse events in collaboration with the provinces and territories, international partners, and manufacturers. As with all vaccines, we will take action if any new safety issues are identified. Today's authorization provides people in Canada with more protection against COVID-19. I know we all wish COVID-19 no longer existed, but people are still getting infected, and vaccination continues to be one of the most effective ways to protect ourselves against serious outcomes, including severe illness, hospitalization, and death. Vaccine protection decreases over time, which means many of us are due for another dose. Receiving a shot of the new formulation will help protect people against the variants circulating currently and expected to circulate through the fall and winter.
They just rubber stamped it, and this authorization, this interim order authorization that was basically pivoted to just be a permanent part of the pharmaceutical approval process doesn't uphold the typical checks and balances that were previously in place to bring these products to market. You have to be so mindful of the words that they use. They're still using authorized. That's authorized under that interim order that was pivoted after 1 year of being implemented to be essentially permanent, a permanent process. And it's based on rolling submissions. So the pharmaceutical manufacturer can continue to submit safety data on a rolling basis. So literally while it's ongoing, while it's being conducted, they will submit the data to continue the authorization. This isn't a full approval. And we've seen that repeatedly where Health Canada basically just follows suit with other jurisdictions and gives their rubber stamp. And sorry, I should clarify that if we're not off of YouTube, I think that we should cut YouTube and just go to those other platforms so we can speak freely.